So, what are you anyway? And we're like, and he said, no, what are you? Are you Japanese? And we said, no, we're American. And he said, what do you speak at home? And we said, English. And he said, well, that's good. Because if you spoke Japanese, you should go back where you came from. And he was, really aggressive. And the librarian, meanwhile, was listening, and she got up, and she was this beautiful woman, about 4'10". She came up, and she looked up like this, and she said, I heard what you were saying to those children, and I want you to know that if you ever express those kinds of ideas and sentiments again, you will not be welcome here. And she kicked them out. And she apologized to my brother and me and said that we didn't have to put up with things like that, and this library was a safe zone, so always please come back. So I love libraries, and I'm really glad to be here, especially since this is Asian American Pacific Islander Month, and I'm very proud to be among that group, and so here I am, and it's very good to see you. Thank you for being here. Okay. Me and Lady M. Now I know you are all literate people here, and I grammatically should say Lady M and I. But I'm saying me and Lady M because I'm an old rock and roller at heart, and me and Bobby McGee is really good for me, so it's me and Lady M, a journey of discovery. Okay, now this goes forward. All right. In telling this story, I start with an image, a photo of a 7 by 6 foot painting titled Self-Portrait as Lady M. In it, I hold a mirror. Oops. A mirror. Reflected back at me is the face of a woman depicted in the indigenous Japanese painting style called Yamato-e. It is a style which characterized the Heian period of Japanese history, roughly 9th through 11th century, over 1,000 years ago. It is a style used to depict Lady Murasaki Shikibu, a lady in the court of Empress Suiko in the late 11th century Japan, a woman who defied the conventions for women of that time, who read and wrote fluently in Chinese, a study deemed unsuitable for females, and whose perspicacious intellect and sensitivity led her to write The Tale of Genji, the world's first novel in vernacular Japanese. This person is Shogo Kariyazaki. I hope you will be in San Francisco soon. He's just an absolutely fabulous flower artist. Makes beautiful, beautiful flowers. Although as the eye of the self-portrait, I wear the traditional Heian period gown and long black hair, this painting represents the nexus between 20th and 21st century me and Lady M, my alter ego, my personal symbol of female empowerment, and my guide who illuminated a path through the labyrinthian complexities of the familial Japanese culture I was born into, and which was my first-tier world growing up. This is the kind of patterning that I was talking about in the long, long hair. This is a doll. The hair is a really big feature. The painting contains patterning drawn from Japanese visual traditions, visual conventions based on the ancient Yamato-e, a nod to Western forms of visual representation and images from current time. How I met Lady Murasaki and how the world of Lady M emerged as years of focus for my creative expression is the story of my life's journey and ultimately the story of my art. Francis Bacon, the prolific, provocative Irish artist, once said, "Because we're human, the most important thing to examine is ourselves, and all art must deal with the viscera of our humanness." My journey to Lady M, our meeting and the journey with her, is what I'm honored to share with you this evening. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy lives to be here, and thank you to the Napa Library for having me. It is an honor and a pleasure. I grew up Karen Nagano, a Sansei, third-generation Japanese-American, on a farm in coastal central California. A country of summer fog, a prevailing northwesterly wind off the ocean, with the smells of earth and vegetation interwoven with the scent of the seas. The first languages I heard were Japanese, Spanish, and Tagalog. English came later, the language of school, and the world beyond the farm. Play as memory, play as prognostication. Play disguised the magical beginnings of my journey to Lady M. Being a kid stuck on a farm with no other kids around, my own fanciful imagination and the expansive nature and fields and running water became my best friends. I remember being lonely at times, but the most vivid memories involve those of purposeful play. Serious business awaited me. Best get to it. Child development experts talk about children's play as a way to discover the world, to act out what they see and observe in the adults and world around them. I remember play as being primarily about remembering. Remembering to say hello to flowers. Remembering to listen when I sat by the creek. Remembering to get up early enough to watch the sunlight gradually illuminate the lath house with striped patterns of light on the ferns and begonias. Remembering to look closely at the unfurling fronds of fern. Nature was first memory, then discovery. When I discovered I could hack off the flexible branches of the weeping willow, slip them under my cowboy belt to make long trailing trains, I would walk and feel a vague memory of the rustling sound and the feel of drag along the ground, reminding me of something I couldn't quite grasp, but which I knew to be deeply important. This is called a mole, this long trailing thing. It will make sense later. Imagine at the beach, the way the strands of kelp grew off the bulbous heads reminded me of something I could not quite place, but which compelled me. They became people to me, and I saw long trailing hair and dragged sticks of driftwood behind the figures to mark their passing in the sand. The hair is very, very significant in the Yamato-e, and it's very significant in my Lady M work. This imaginative play was longing, memory, and discovery, something both precious and remote, something I ached for, longed for, and simultaneously feared forgetting and losing. It was the stirrings of the journey, the first baby steps. Finding my face. To find a face, you first have to lose it. I know the exact moment I realized I'd lost my face. Late August, shopping for school with 2 high school girlfriends. We dashed across the street as the light turned red. I glanced into the window of the store in front of us and saw 2 Caucasian girls and 1 odd alien one. It took long seconds before I realized that the alien was me. A feeling of great sadness and loss welled up, and I had absolutely no idea what to do about it. I'd like to read a poem now. It's called Life Raft. In it, I use a few Japanese words. Oji-chan means grandpa, Oba-chan means grandma, and Momotaro is Peach Boy. In the child's fairy tale, he was a boy who was encapsulated in a large peach, and his mother found him in the peach bobbling down the river. So this poem is called Life Raft. Oji-chan, Oba-chan, Float across the pond to me. A peach delivered Momotaro. Why not a lily pad, returning your smooth, unpeeled bodies to me in this ghost land? Why not a lily pad raft, easing smoothly through opaline water from that other distant shore? And a heart, a bridge. The eye of now sees the connection between the trailing willow branches tucked under my belt with the mole worn by the Heian court ladies. The mole is that long trailing thing. And this is a painting I did of me in my dream of white, which I think is a pretty strange image. The eye of now identifies the imagining of the long trailing hair of the kelp with the Heian woman's hair. The teenager then had forgotten the impulse towards memory, but she did remember that at one time she'd seen the face of the Buddha in the family altar as beautiful and glowing, and now saw it as hard, foreign, and ugly. The teenager of then remembered being a small child and looking up at her mother and seeing her face as the face of a goddess, beautiful beyond description. But all of that was lost, replaced with an internal image of white that was not mother, not me, not grandmother, aunt, or cousins. And here is another poem. It's called A Dream of White. So I have a painting, A Dream of White, and a poem, A Dream of White. A dream of white, a mansion, cocktails at 5, lace-edged sheets. A dream of white, breakfast at 7 served on a tray with linen placemat. A dream of white, the gardener in the cutting garden, the flowers waiting. A dream of white, my grandmother's erased, while I sip and eat and laugh and sleep. Finding my face, 1. Oops, I lost my place. I heard the inner voices of words strung together like Jap, chink, nip. Gook was not part of the lexicon yet. That came later. Ugly Japanese. Go home. What are you? You'd be really pretty if you had your eyes fixed. Or the sentences from my best friend's mother. Oh, our Jeannie can't go out with Ronnie. He's Japanese. Oh, you do understand, don't you? Of course, the teenager then and the I of now did not and do not understand. Or boys I'd grown up with, their mothers on PTA committees with my mother and aunts, attending their birthday parties from kindergarten on, breaking a date with me saying, my parents won't let me go out with you because you're Japanese. And my uncle saying, what the hell? What's to be upset about? Your parents shelter you too much. That's just how it is. Get over it. I sob uncontrollably because, what are you supposed to do? You are not allowed because you are? The dream of white. It's a tributary, a splinter stream. A bigger stream flows, the stream of memory, a connection to the childhood studio under the trees. A connection to the voice of flowers, the morning light, the willow branches, the first color wheel in a forbidden art class, all that reconnects to memory, a sense of light, a boundless aliveness. But art is not the path to assimilation. The top flight college, the marriage into the elite, the educational dream of white, upward mobility into the world of white,
That's what relocation, incarceration, institutionally sanctioned racism will do to you. It drives you to become your oppressor. Art is not part of that track, but it is a conduit to memory, to what has been lost. And though art is forbidden territory to me, I learned how to sneak and how to bend to get my art. And art forged the link to my face before the forgetting. Losing my face was sad. I imagined myself, what, Madonna? Miley Cyrus? If that showed up in a shop window reflection, would I have felt a sense of me? Sad, really sad. Even more scary is losing the eyes to see the faces I once saw as beautiful. Eyes that turned against them and saw them as the unacceptable other, the them of which I was one. It's called internalized racism, though I didn't know that then. What led to that shutting off of the inner eye? The cartoons with Japanese depicted with buck teeth, black upward slash of lines for eyes, round glasses, Mr. Moto, yellow skin, squeaky, squealy, obsequious and deceptive, Marlon Brando bouncing around on flexed knees like a monkey playing a Japanese houseboy, my uncle moving into Atherton and being repeatedly mistaken for the gardener, although at least he was able to buy in Atherton, not so in Los Altos Hills. Attending a wedding reception as a guest at the Bay Club in empty glass. The only Asian in the room must be the help, right? And of course, I knew the posture. My maternal grandparents, having worked as domestics for the wealthy elite of Fresno. My mother and my two aunts, related only through marriage to three brothers, different heights, different weights, different facial construct, and even different shades of hair from jet black to auburn, even after 20 years in the community being told, "You look just alike, I can never tell you apart." Bill, George, Pat, the brothers born and raised there, can't tell them apart. Mary, Ruth, Ann, can't tell them apart. All those imprints on a tender young mind, over and over, and so little to counteract them. My true eyes that could see my face and the faces of those I loved dimmed. I stumbled in the dark. I might have gone completely blind had it not been for imagination and art. The conduit that connected past and future to my then present time. The conduit that was ever so narrow a path on my way to Lady M. This Buddha is called Miroku, also Maitreya. It's the Buddha of the future. So I hung on to that. I stumbled in darkness through high school. I knew Lady M only as a disembodied whisper, a niggle in my heart. Outwardly, it was all good. Honor Society, award-winning public speaker, girls' state, church choir, county honor band, school fencing champion, president of our junior class, student body vice president, and then, the cherry to top it all, early admittance to Stanford. Perfect, right? Not. Inwardly, I suffered recurrent nightmares. Socially, I discovered that I was okay for the friends I'd known since kindergarten's birthday parties, but not for dating. My sense of social trust became ever more fragile. My father, who never put down his newspaper to look at my art projects when I was a kid, was suddenly vehemently opposed to my art. I began hiding my paintings under my bed and painting at night under a tent of blankets to hide the light. In that household, my brother hid his Playboy magazines under his mattress, and I hid my paintings under the bed. My mother kept buying me dolls for Christmas. With the support of my music teacher and my art teacher, I summoned the resolve to keep painting, albeit through subterfuge. I found the connection to memory still existed. I found myself painting scenes of places I'd never been. Was that memory or precognition? Each scene had a figure of a young girl with black bobbed hair and bangs. The scenes looked Japanese to me, similar to the few black and white family photos of life in Japan that survived the devastation of World War II relocation and imprisonment. I painted my scenes with bright colors, bewildered because it was as though my hand and brush had lives of their own, creating images that I had no conscious knowledge of, happy because I felt such a feeling of wholeness and completion and homecoming as I looked at what I'd done. I finally got to Japan my sophomore year of college. One of the scenes I had painted in high school was of the very street I walked up daily when I returned home from classes in Tokyo. I could still feel the shock of recognition and the inner opening out at the realization that life is so much larger and more complex than I'd ever dreamed. The yet-to-be-made visible Lady M had given me a glimpse of my future and led me to that exact spot. I heard the words Heian Jidai and Murasaki Shikibu for the first time a few months into my Japan stay. It's the most remarkable thing, I heard my Japanese friend's father saying to his drinking buddy. Here's this young woman from America, moves like an American, talks with an American accent, smells like an American, and yet she has the face of a classical Heian beauty, someone out of Genji Monogatari. In that moment, my paradigm shifted. I had never equated my face with the word beauty, ever. That hallucinatory moment overrode a lifetime of imprinting. So, what's this Genji Monogatari? What's Heian Jidai? I asked my friend, and so my outward journey with Lady M began. Finding my face too. Oh, this this translation of The Tale of Genji is one of the most poetic, beautiful ones. It was done very early, 1950-something, by Arthur Waley, who was brilliant, talented, and didn't complete things. So he never did finish the book. He got through about the first 4 chapters, but even so, it's worth reading. It's beautiful. Then go on and read Steigensdecker's, which will take you through the whole journey. Concurrent to my official, though casual, introduction to Lady M ran the thread of my conscious search to find my face. Instinctively, I knew that if I could learn to see the Buddha's face again, I might be able to find my own. My gentle, kind friend, Suzuki-san, took on the role of guide and helper to lead me to the vision of the Buddha as she saw him, as soft, flowing, and luminous, and from whom she received a feeling of peace and well-being. We trekked to a Zen Buddhist temple in Kamakura to sit a sesshin open to lay people. We visited temple after temple to see one famous Buddha after another. Each time Suzuki-san would look at me expectantly, I would shake my head no. Finally, we gave up. Then one winter day, wandering around Kyoto on my own, I hopped on a bus to Ohara, a small temple town in the outlying hills. There, unexpectedly, I found what I'd been seeking. And this poem has been I wrote in English, but it's been translated for me by a friend into Japanese, so I will read it first in Japanese, and then I will read it in English. Hotoke ni 3000 人にて眼差しの中の私、雪に隠された参道、その上に記されたササンカの血の滴り、仏の門へとたどり着く 氷のような木の回路、フェルトのスリッパの中、私の足は凍えて滑る。上り階段は急斜面。砕けんばかりに痛む腰。あなたにふさわしいくらいお堂の前に立つあなたの尊厳を照らす金色の日。窓に吹きかけた息のよう。どれくらい経ったのか。金色の息の中。ついにあなたの不動の生差しに捉えられた私がいた。To the Buddha at Sanzen Inn, finding my face. Like fresh blood, sasanka petals on blinding snow mark the path to your portal. My feet in felt slippers glide on wooden floors as cold as glaciers. Climbing steps so steep my hip joints crack. Aching, I stand before the dark cave of your becoming. The golden sun of your face emerges like breath on a window, and emerges still, until at last, in your gaze, I am found. The gift of that moment, the coming to life of the Buddha's face, and by extension my own, liberated my long-buried vision. From that moment, my stay in Japan transformed into one of familiarity and knowing. Long-forgotten words and phrases from my Japanese-speaking childhood, my grandmother's stories, and the astounding unfolding of the context for my grandparents' gestures, body language, nuances of voice, social conventions, all made perfect sense. They were not weird or crazy. They were Japanese. And a world existed in which they were the norm, not the outsider, not the alien. Images I saw in dreams or imagination that I doodled on the edges of my class notes existed solid and full scale in the world around me. I wasn't crazy. I'm Japanese. I returned to the U.S. with an academic year in Japan, after an academic year in Japan, with fluent Japanese, a new sense of myself, and a full-on commitment to my art. 6,000 miles from home, I gathered the resolve to assert myself and declare my intention to major in art. I had found my face. Lady M revealed herself. Time to move on. Moving on proved tricky once back in the U.S. In every way, I was failing to integrate what I had experienced, seen, and discovered while in Japan. My Tokyo accent distressed my grandmother, who spoke in a southern Kyushu dialect. My mother apologized to her friends for the verbal and physical mannerisms I had picked up. My brother buried the album of Odetta singing Japanese folk songs in Japanese with koto accompaniment in the back of his desk drawer and never listened to it. When I incorporated images from my travels in Japan into my paintings, my professor told me to paint what I know. Back in the USA. I did my best to nurture my time in Japan. I participated in the organization that had sent me to Japan on scholarship to study Japanese. I worked on the committee to select the next scholarship recipients. I joined the International House Japanese Students Club. None of that satisfied. None of those activities connected to the spirit and the aliveness I had discovered in the temples of Sanzen-in, in the gardens, in the feel of the land itself, and the spiritual energy of the people. So I turned down the marriage proposal from a Japanese grad student in business school who promised me a mansion in Tokyo and a summer house in Karuizawa and complete access to his Lincoln convertible, and proceeded to craft my own tenuous thread to the world that had revealed itself in Japan. a timeless world of space, color, magic, and a visual language that resonated to my very bones. And I did it right here in noisy, boisterous, extrovert-driven America, dreaming and conjuring lit the way. This painting is called, I can't remember the title, but there's a poem that goes with it, which I didn't include in this presentation, but dreams like silver fish swimming up her hair. They're swimming up her hair to go into her mind and illuminate her dreams. I began to read and reread The Tale of Genji by Murasaki Shikibu. These paintings that I'm going through now, they're all from a series of paintings from the world of Lady M called By the River of Dreams. So now the river is not her hair, they are by the river. And reading and literacy are really big to me and to Lady M. So you'll see they're reading there. That was before we had got our son. So where was I? So I read and reread The Tale of Genji by Murasaki Shikibu. I read in translation all the translations available at the time. I continue to read each new translation as they emerge, the most recent in 2015. I wanted to understand the Heian woman whose face my own represented so uncannily. I read Japanese history, focusing on pre-Tokugawa era Japan, especially the early periods Nara and Heian. With a Japanese tutor, I read much of it in Japanese. Doing so gave me deeper, more detailed descriptions and historical accounts than anything I'd found in English. I did not follow these pursuits academically. It was just me doing me. Nothing academic about it. The linear process of learning and demonstrating knowledge that I used for my academic successes did not have the life and energy of the process that led me on. Now I call that process Lady M. Then it had no name. For lack of better words, I called it intuition, feeling, basically just me. I began sitting zazen. I found my Buddhist teacher. I moved to Carmel, California because it reminded me of Japan. In Carmel, Lady M revealed herself to me again more clearly and specifically than ever before. Embarking on a Zen practice sharpened my ability to sense Lady M's nudgings. It also awakened within me an intelligence of line and compositional spatial sensibility that had lain dormant. The linear intelligence manifested in a drawing ability and style that flowed forth with natural ease, yet I had never known it of myself except in sporadic patches, which would appear and disappear like a will-o'-the-wisp, so elusive I could never claim it. Zen practice uncorked that line and gave it purchase. The world around me became alive with line. At a market one day, I saw a garlic braid. The linear quality of the braided stems hypnotized me. I bought the braid, took it home, and immediately began drawing the garlic braid and bulbs, then doing them in watercolor, then adding gold leaf. At that juncture, a magical helper showed up in the form of Elizabeth Murray, fellow artist and friend. "Here," she said, "I thought you might enjoy her company for a while." And this is the back of the doll that she handed me, an exquisite antique Japanese doll, an empress of Hinamatsuri dolls whose dress and facial characteristics are those of Heian court people. This is a watercolor of the back of the doll Elizabeth lent me. The stem from the linear garlic braids to the linear hair, echoing the patterns of hair in the woman of the Yamato-e, was a natural lateral one. I entered the world of Lady M full on. The shadow. With Lady M fully visible in my world, she became the focal point of my artistic expression. I started out in watercolor, colors pastel and ephemeral, her world which intersected so effortlessly with mine, which maybe was mine or mine hers, mirrored the remembered world of my childhood. Nature, flowers, running water, the glimmers of gold. After my 1998 trip to Japan, the colors amped up. Colors became strong, clear, and vivid. I switched to oils and the sturdy support of canvas on stretcher bars. Lady M's roots run deep. Just as Zen practice uncorked my linear sensibility and sense of space and composition, so Lady M uncorked memory. Memory which included the demons of my early life. Early childhood sexual abuse, verbal and physical abuse, a rigid, punitive, oppressive patriarchal family culture. Just as the lexicon of Zen Buddhist brush painting includes scenes of Jitoku, Buddhist hell, so the world of Lady M provided me ground on which to stand and face my demons. Even as I resisted, fearful that I would be swallowed up by the anger and pain, the same gently persistent nonverbal urgings of Lady M led me to embark on my Hungry Ghost series. Lady M always surprises. Rather than becoming overwhelmed or thrown into the darkness of rage, pain, depression, as soon as I began to fully open up to expressing the monsters from the past, a light, expansive energy transformed my confrontation with my feared hungry ghosts into a kind of play. The horrific became fanciful, even humorous. The scarier I knew the monster to be, the more endearing. I now make conscious space to give form to my monsters. Given form, my pain becomes my friend. Jung talked about the need to go into our shadow side. He talked about the creative energy that resides in those suppressed parts. His words ring true to me. I dedicate my hungry ghosts to him. In Zen Buddhism, we feed the hungry ghosts. I bow to my Buddhist ancestors. I invite you to entertain my hungry ghosts as a way to tap into the liberating energy of complete self-acceptance. The world, Lady M and me. Since 1998, my trips to Japan have brought Lady M and me closer together. I long since returned Elizabeth's Empress doll to her and began a collection of my own. I visited Ishiyama-dera, the temple in Shiga Prefecture where Murasaki Shikibu wrote much of the tale of Genji. I visited Uji, a city where one of the major female characters in the tale of Genji lived, and which is the home of the beautiful contemporary Murasaki Shikibu Museum. I've spent hours in the Costume Museum in Kyoto, which contains exquisite models of Heian period Shinden-zukuri architecture with near life-size dolls wearing Heian period court dress. I've read manga based on Genji Monogatari characters and illustrated in Heian style and fashion. During the trip to Japan in 2000, I was allowed to wear the Juni Hitoe, 12-layered court kimono worn by the Heian women at the museum in Himeji. The weight of the robes shocked me. I could barely move. What must it have been to bear the weight of the robes, the hair, the social expectations? What burdens must I untangle? This is the mo that I played with the willow branches and finally get to wear full on. Oops. Lady M meets Lady M. This is a diptych. How close am I to Lady M, and who is who? On the same trip, I visited Rozanji, a temple on the site in Kyoto, on the site where Murasaki Shikibu is believed to have grown up. A formal tatami room opens out onto a Heian-style garden. In front of the temple stands a large stone with one of Murasaki Shikibu's poems inscribed on it. Strangely, I noticed it as we were leaving. The sight of that stone with the poem touched me so deeply I burst into tears, and I thought, I want that. I want one of my poems inscribed in stone. As my tears cleared, I glanced back towards the temple, and hovering over the roof, I saw Lady M, translucent, glowing, and I heard her voice in my mind as I've never heard it before or since. Take me into the world. Take me with you. I want to fly. This year, 2016, I am happy to report my poem, A Garden, is cast in bronze and mounted on a stone in the Eto Park Japanese Garden in San Luis Obispo, California. I wrote the poem for the dedication to the park, which is named for my great-uncle Tameji Eto. The poem is called A Garden. It's for Eto Park and all the Etos, of which I am one. A garden calls us, as it called our ancestors, as it calls our children and their children, yet unborn. We all, past, present, and future, long for Eden, paradise beyond blame, sacred perfection, lion lying with lamb, roots tangled in soil, a taproot to eternity. We seek the morning star, lifting the treetops, pale dawn, a finger touching earth. We seek the great awakening. Our long journey requires the solace of Gethsemane, knee bent to rock, long solitary hours under trees, prayer for strength, prayer for will, prayer for purpose fulfilled. Our hearts seek a garden, ground for the seeds we receive in cupped hands, seeds of forgiveness, of love, of peace, of trust. Our hearts seek a garden, this garden, this. The world of Lady M has expanded to include a digital medium, eye drawings done on iPhone and iPad. We have applied our linear and spatial sensibility to 21st century technology. With this expansion, Lady M now maintains that her sleeves are wings. This is out of order, but I will tell you what it is. It's the Heian-style garden that is outside the main room of Rosanji Temple, where Lady Murasaki grew up. And it's the garden that I used as the backdrop for this painting, which is called Annunciation. I did a number of paintings that are based on Italian Renaissance compositions with Japanese Heian women in their court dress. It's my sense of humor. Hard to explain, but I like Italian Renaissance painting. I love it. And I wanted to see it, the compositions and the ideas Japanized. So the tile roof, the plaster wall, these little funny trees, I forget what those, they're called blue, they're not bluebells, whatever they're called, and the mole here. And it's based on the composition. I think it's Leonardo's composition. I did studies of so many I don't remember. Anyway, and this is called Ascension, which is in feeling the Lady M that I saw above the temple. She's in flight. And this is an eye drawing. It says in hiragana, it says neko, which is the word for cat. You may have noticed from the art images that Lady M, I, me, co-opt the world around us into the world of Lady M. The multicultural faces of the children of Salinas find their way into the field of Heian patterning and color. My son Genji's hair represented with the same linear quality as the figures in the Heian period, Yamato-e. The face of the Buddha informing all faces with the touch of breath. It's all part of the world of Lady M and me. So, real briefly, before I go on to the concluding paragraph or two, I'm going to pass around these books with a pen. I would just love it if you would like to hear more about what I'm doing, and let's see. Just write your name and email legibly, and I would love to keep you in touch with what I'm doing and where you can see my work, and to include you in this unfolding Lady M adventure. Also, I just would like to tell you I'm very excited about this. In May of 2017, I will be the library's guest artist, and my work will be on display throughout the library, and you will be able to see it in person. And the real work is so much more alive than anything that I can show you here. So that's something I'm looking forward to, and I hope that you'll be able to see it. Okay. So, Lady M and me, provisional, permanent. For years I thought my Lady M work was a diversion from my real art. That what came forth in the world of Lady M was too idiosyncratic, too just me, to qualify as serious work. What I forgot is that play is serious work, that what is personal is frequently universal, and that our specific lives, very specific lives, are the very stuff from which art flows. Art can do many things. It can reveal, document, inspire, beautify, confront, transport, uplift, demystify, mystify, enrage, outrage, engage, heal. Most powerfully, it connects and leaves you different than you were before, hopefully more expanded, more alive to the world both within you and around you. I've talked exclusively about being Japanese American, emphasis on Japanese tonight. It's important for me to acknowledge the other half of the equation. I am also American. I, as were my parents, was born here. I know it and cherish it. My claiming of my Japaneseness and the soul of my creative work being Japanese does not negate the American in the least. I am married to a Caucasian American whose ancestors came to America from Europe more than 200 years ago. Together we inhabit a shared culture that is larger than the sum total of our individual ancestral cultures. It is a huge world, made huger by our individual cultural inheritances. As an American, I hold an innate sense of individuality, a willingness to challenge norms, a distrust of tradition for its own sake, a deep taproot into the bedrock of American rock and roll, jazz, the blues, the sense of scale, of space, and an impulse towards freedom that's felt in the body. It's what my grandmother felt when she threw off the kimono and vowed never to wear one again. My Lady M would not exist without the American of me. She would be bored. As the Japanese American woman artist I am, my hope is that you will allow my work to take you on the Lady M journey, that as you enter into the visual, emotional, spiritual world of it, you will drop the labels of Japanese, American, familiar, unfamiliar, male, female, that you will lose the concept of other and enter into the visual world of Lady M, much as you would enter into the world of music, to allow the eye to be engaged fully, to follow the rhythm of color, shape, patterns, to feel the visceral delight of a spot of red in an otherwise blue, pink, green, and lavender painting, to allow it to take you. Then my journey with Lady M will become yours, and we will both have entered a bigger world because of it. Thank you very much. Any questions?
So this is an oil painting, this one here?
Yes, it is. It is oil.
It's very smooth.
Yeah, I use oil in a way that some people don't recognize as oil painting, but I like oil paint. I could do similar things with acrylic, but I like oil paint because of the luminosity of the color. And I like it because it doesn't dry too fast, and I'm able to go back in and work color back and forth together. Color is just a huge, huge issue for me, and I'm most satisfied with what I can do with color, with oil paint.
The lady's face in the mirror.
Yes.
And there was another woman. She has 2 dots on her forehead.
Oh, yes, good question. The convention for beauty in Heian, Japan, how do I say this? They thought eyebrows were ugly. So women would shave off their eyebrows, and then they would use charcoal or some kind of a dark powder and make dots up here on their forehead, way up here. And that was considered quite beautiful. Sometimes you'll see paintings done with eyebrows and these smudges up here. But if you read any of the Heian literature, I'm trying to think of one. It was about, it was written after Tale of Genji. But this one young woman refused to shave her eyebrows off. And there's this whole paragraph about how ugly they were, like caterpillars crawling over her face, and on and on and on. I mean, it's just very interesting. But yeah, that's a great question.
Did the men shave their eyebrows too?
No, the men did not. They shaved their hair around here and made big top knots, so they had their own suffering.
What other features did Heian women promote? Like the teeth?
Ah, yes. Teeth were considered very symbols of aggression, and it was not considered attractive for women to be aggressive. So women blackened their teeth with an iron solution, and their teeth were black. So in one of my sets of dolls, of which I didn't bring a photograph, it's the oldest that I have, the Empress has a very hollow-looking mouth, and that was a characteristic of the women because of their blackened teeth. They did not bind feet.
We have a question in the back.
Yeah, on an historical note, how many family members did you have in prison during World War II?
Well, I wasn't born then, but my parents, everyone. My grandfather was taken by federal agents shortly after Pearl Harbor and placed in a federal prison. No one ever told me. I still don't know exactly where he went. My great uncle, the one whose park I wrote the poem for, he was also arrested at the same time. And so my grandmother, both sets of grandparents, my parents, all of my aunts and uncles. None of my other cousins were born then, but other families, friends of the family, had young children, so all the children, I mean, everybody. Anyone else?
So your pursuit of the tale of Genji,
Yeah,
and you're becoming an artist.
yeah.
Like what I hear is you just did it yourself. There must have been other people or influences, or how did you get solid in that with your goal and your art? Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, I hear what you're asking,
Yeah.
and it's a good question. And I did have support. There was one family friend who had given up his artistic aspirations to take over the family farm, and he would bring me real art supplies when he and his wife came over for dinner. And this was extraordinary. I mean, he would go and buy the most expensive stuff and come with a bag and say, here, see what you can do with this. And then my uncle, my father's youngest brother, was an architect, and he always showed interest in my art. So even as my father was saying, don't do it, and I was actually punished for painting, my uncle was always asking me what I was doing. And do you have anything to show me? So that made a huge difference. I mentioned a music teacher and an art teacher. I had an art teacher in high school who would bring art books in brown paper bags to lend me. And the brown paper bag was because there would frequently be nude drawings. And he said, if they know I'm giving you this, I'll be fired. So it was very funny, these brown paper bags of art. And he was wonderful. And then my music teacher, I started working with him when I was in 4th grade. And he was from Georgia, the Republic of Georgia, and had been trained to be a concert pianist. His father was in the theater, and he just was this cultured, artistic person. He encouraged me. So I had these people who were recognizing me and encouraging me. The pressure to not do what I was doing was very, very strong. But I felt very alone, but I wasn't as alone as I felt. Thank you. Yeah.
Did your father feel as though your art was frivolous? Is that, what did he have against you in painting?
You know, I don't know. I've asked him, and once I never gave up, you know, and once I started exhibiting, he would come to my openings with my mother, sometimes, and act like it was sort of his idea, you know, like, oh yes, well, you know, my daughter, the artist. But still, and I asked him, and I don't know, but he had a very similar attitude towards my brother's creative activities. So I think that he was probably very creative himself, and that he squelched it completely. And it wasn't payback. It was just, if he was going to be in pain, then we'd be in pain too in the same way, kind of thing. It's my guess.
I'm glad you kept going.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was kind of like, sometimes, you know, when I was learning all of this about everything, about the Japanese culture, now it is so wonderful. There are Asian American studies departments, you know, and there's all this literature about the relocation. There's so much information. And now that manga and anime is so popular and just contemporary culture, you hear Japanese words and you see things that I know are from the Japanese culture. It wasn't like that when I was growing up. It was very, very hard. There was no literature. I had to fight for everything. But I was always pretty energetic and very stubborn, so maybe that's how it was supposed to be. I don't know. I'm really happy for young people today, though. There's just so much more information and so much more cultural exchange. But I'll tell you something. Racism is still alive and well. My son is 15. He was born in Japan. And the things he tells me that people say to him at school, this is the 21st century, it's very, very sad.
One more big round of applause for Karen. Before we end the evening, everyone, I'd just like to remind you that if you are available, this Saturday we're going to have our Asian American and Pacific Islander celebration right here in this very room. We're going to be having everything from taiko drumming to a candid historical look on Chinese Americans during the late 1800s here in Napa. Our very own Fumio is going to do a mochi demonstration, showing how that's traditionally made. So it really is that continuation of celebrating, learning more about, and being able to discover the varied and rich different cultures of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. And so again, that's going to be on Saturday starting at 2 p.m. Last but certainly not least, again, Karen, thank you so much for coming.